It's an honor to have a gentleman back. I hadn't had him on there a bunch, but I have had him, and he does an excellent job. Jonathan Williams, American Legislative Exchange Council. They call it ALEC. Jonathan, been a while. How you doing, brother?
Doing great, Moon. Good to hear from you, my friend. Happy New Year. Hope everything is well with you.
Well, I'm like the Salvation Army band. I'm doing the best I can. It's all good, man. So tell us what's going on. I know you had an opportunity to go to the White House. You had an opportunity to join President Trump and other national leaders, education, freedom, and parental empowerment during National School Choice Week. What happened? What's going on? How's this working out? And, you know, even in Louisiana, we had a big jump in scores, which I hope is something you can visit about.
Well, it was a great Friday. I'll tell you what, I think I'm still on cloud nine coming off of that, having lunch with President Trump and several other leaders from across the country, including Governor Landry and Mrs. Landry, and had a chance to visit about just the incredible movement, this magic moment that we've seen across the country, sweeping the nation on school choice and parental empowerment, something that ALEC and our ALEC members across the country have been a part of, something that we were pleased to talk about. We talked about the great results in Louisiana and the improvement there because of the GATOR plan that I know was signed into law just recently by Governor Landry and by the legislative leaders after just hard work going into that effort. But just an amazing time to sit down, take really account of what's happened across the country coming out of the lockdowns of the pandemic and all of the bad policies of the Biden administration, and just a Morning America again moment with President Trump as we look through and talk about what's next for education freedom across all 50 states.
You know, I looked up, and of course, we had good numbers here. We had the best numbers we've ever had in education on these national testing. But I look up, and that's not happening all over the country. But this freedom to go do what you're talking about doing has got to make it better for a lot of areas. And I know here, we voted for a lot of this kind of stuff. We voted for some of the changes.
Oh, it's absolutely really a game changer, because when you empower parents to make the decisions that are best for their children, we shouldn't be surprised when they make decisions that are best for their children, as opposed to some far-off bureaucrat in a state capital or in Washington, D.C., even worse yet. And so the GATOR reform there in Louisiana, as well as just so many other states. We now, Governor Lee was with us from Tennessee. He was even maybe more on cloud nine than I was, because he had just come out 24 hours before of his legislature passing their universal school choice program, becoming the 13th state in the country since 2001 to become universal school choice. And now, of course, the discussion in Washington with President Trump and congressional leaders being really at the heart of this discussion is, how do we make sure that we incentivize more of that? How do we make sure that we get more of the resources out of Washington, D.C. and the failed Department of Education bureaucracy that Moon, in its 40-plus year history, when Ronald Reagan had been trying to get rid of it even in its first few years and came up just short. It has not directly ever educated one child. And juxtapose that versus the tremendous progress that states like Louisiana are making on education freedom. And then, of course, what you talked about, the results of what that brings, it is just absolutely a tremendous outcome.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. By the way, Jonathan Williams, my special guest, American Legislative Exchange Council. Jonathan, I'm just kind of curious, why can't President Trump get rid of this education department? Look, the states, we get money from the Congress. Congress can still send money to the states, but they can get out of the education business, because what they do, they mandate. They send money for a year or two, then we get buying down here with not enough money. We got all these mandates coming down. Why can't the President of the United States, with the help of Congress, get rid of the education department? I'm just kind of curious.
I think it's a real contention that they may, because of the DOGE effort that's going on right now, led by Elon Musk, and looking for rethinking the way that government does business. How do we get out from under this $36+ trillion of national debt that we have? It's going to take more than just incremental thinking, Moon. If we're going to ever have a chance to get out from under this debt burden that we have as a nation, it's going to be bold thinkers like Elon, like President Trump, like members of Congress that say, what is this Department of Education getting us in terms of return on taxpayer dollars? And then, of course, probably the bigger question for a lot of governors and a lot of our ALEC state legislators from across the country is, what are the regulations and the strings that come with the federal money? What does it cost us? And in many cases, I think I'd make the argument that the cost is way higher than the actual benefit of what we're getting from Department of Education, even if the federal government is sending money out. And so I think a complete rethinking of the way that education is provided, with at the heart of it being the parental focus, the starting with the family and then moving outwards from there.
Let's be blunt, Jonathan. The inner city of L.A. or Chicago or New York is going to have a different set of needs than Lafayette Parish, where I live, Monroe, Louisiana. It's going to have a different set of needs. All these school systems here are going to be different than inner city L.A. Why should we be under the same type rule?
That's a great point. It should be absolutely able to be customized by state and community and by needs of the families and the parents, and even within the kinds of learning needs that kids have, whether they have learning disabilities or whether they have ways to go up above and beyond. We need to be able to customize education for those kids' outcomes. And that, at the end of the day, is exactly, I think, what the president and what governors like Governor Landry are trying to do, and doing it well at the state level. I think the big challenge when you look at some of these big blue cities, especially, that have been really beholden to teachers' unions and their influence on politics for far too long. Look what they're spending in the K-12 systems in places like New York City and Chicago and Baltimore. I mean, they're spending $30,000 or $35,000 per pupil per year in their K-12 systems, and what are they getting for it? You look at some of the results, it's not the results that are improving like the results in Louisiana, like you just talked about. In some of these cases, they're seeing where there's next to zero of their students reading at grade level or doing math at grade level. I mean, that's the kind of thing that when you look at how you go about redoing business, if you were in the private sector, you're getting zero results and you're spending that much on the input side. Something has to be done to shake things up, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about in Washington.
Yeah, it's. I just thought, man, if you could really have somebody tear down that the education deal, you mean to tell me people are not smart enough in states to figure out their own system they need to educate their own kids? I just don't think the federal government is giving that kind of guidance. I tell you what the federal government is getting through the education. They're giving lots of money and grants if you do what they say. They are doing that, but that's it in terms of what they're helping, these states out.
Well, that's right. And for those of us who believe in that 10th Amendment idea of the Bill of Rights and federalism, that states ought to be autonomous and be able to help govern themselves, this is probably where the rubber hits the road, Moon, is that states have to stand up and say enough is enough. We don't want the so-called free federal money. We want the flexibility back into our taxpayers in our states to keep more of their hard-earned money so then we can make the decisions for ourselves. And if there was one theme throughout the course of lunch on Friday with President Trump and Governor Landry and those leaders, it was that we ought to be able to empower states and people to make the decisions for themselves. And coming away from that, I was never more optimistic of the future of the way we're going to do education in this country.
Yeah. Let me take a break. Jonathan Williams, of course, with our friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council. They call it ALEC. I'll let him give out a website and all that when we get back. Hey, let me take a break, come back in about 6-7 more minutes, and get you out of here. And thank you, as always. Always enjoy talking to you. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Jonathan Williams, my special guest, American Legislative Exchange Council. Hey, Jonathan, how can people find out? Tell us about your website and what people can find out on your website.
Well, the website is ALEC.org, and it's a great spot to check out our brand new report on state educational freedom and parental empowerment that was just released for School Choice Week. This is where Louisiana ranks in the top 10, just an incredible achievement after the education freedom package that was passed there. And also, you can find out more about our Education Freedom Alliance, is a group that ALEC and our coalition members put together to really, our goal is to get to 25 states to be universal school choice states by the end of 2025. And it's we're at 13 now, so we're within the realm of possibility. We encourage anybody that would like to get involved with that effort to check us out at ALEC.org.
But y'all, the biggest thing y'all pushed is the school choice. Y'all actually Do y'all deal with the educational side of anything with the way people are taught, any of that, or strictly to get people to have that freedom?
Well, the freedom is the biggest thing, right?
I agree with
because
that. I agree.
can actually navigate for themselves, and but we do have an education workforce development task force that looks at all elements of education policy at the state and local level, including curriculum items and standards, and to have real transparency so parents know what in the world is being taught to their kids. If we learned something from the COVID experience and the lockdowns, it was that parents need to have more information on what's being taught to their kids. But a whole lot on choice, a whole lot on incentivizing the folks that want to be homeschoolers to make sure that government and regulations stay out of their way, charter schools, open enrollment, lots of different things that we look at both in our report that I talked about on the ALEC website, but then also our education workforce development task force.
You know, my question is dealing with choice. After COVID, don't you think COVID, with people paying attention, everybody's on the computer, parents walking in and out, checking what's going on, did that help school choice tremendously? Because somebody's sitting there is going, you know what? It's not that I want them to be at home, but boy, this gives me a choice when they're at home. I wonder if I could go do something else, because I got to believe that helped the cause since COVID.
Moon, I think you hit the nail on the head. Exactly right. In that, I think if it wouldn't have been for parents paying more attention to what their kids were being taught, what's going on in their kids' education, I don't think we would have seen this school choice revolution that ALEC and our members have been at the leadership of over the last several years. Now with 13 states become universal school choice states since 2021, when we had our ALEC board chairman, a senator from West Virginia, immigrant from Venezuela, kicked off this effort in West Virginia, Senator Patricia Rucker. I don't think it would have happened without that. And, I was one of the people at our lunch on Friday was Governor Glenn Youngkin from here in Virginia. And you remember that fateful day where Terry McAuliffe was running for governor again. He had the head of the teachers union, Randy Weingarten, out for an event, and they essentially said out loud what they probably thought for a long time, is that parents shouldn't be involved in their kids' education, and bureaucrats basically should. And that tipped the scales in favor of Glenn Youngkin. That's why we have Glenn Youngkin as a phenomenal governor here in Virginia. But I think, Moon, you hit that nail on the head. Absolutely right, that parents paid attention, and that made all the difference in the world.
Oh, no, it to me, and that's like, and that was like gold. That was like God sent. You know what I'm saying? It really was. I mean, it was so important to get the movement. Let me ask you a question. How easy is it to work in Louisiana now? We went from Bel Edwards, who fought all this, to Jeff Landry, who's open to it, the governor.
Well, I tell you what, it's been a game changer in terms of look at what you've gotten done. Just look at the results, right? In terms of the flat tax and the tax reform, I was there testifying in the fall with Mark Wright and the others on that, and the school choice in the first year. I mean, just a watershed difference to have Governor Landry and to have conservative legislative leaders move the ball in the right direction. And I think, Moon, this is going to be a great example to say when you get policy right, I would look very soon for Louisiana to begin moving up the rankings when it comes to either our rich states, poor states economic outlook report. It's already moved up in education freedom in our report. And then I don't think it's going to be long before you see people moving back into Louisiana and reversing these horrible trends that you and I have talked about on the air many times, of so many people leaving Louisiana because of not having the economic or education opportunity. And because of what Governor Landry and the legislators have done, that has all been changed.
Yeah, we got to change something. I know education is part of it. Job climate is got to get better than what it's been. We do have some companies starting to look back and come back just because they knew Ed was tied to the trial lawyers like he is. They just wouldn't come back. I mean, they're hurting oil and gas industry. Legacy lawsuits are still out there hurting us. And I think we got to get away from some of that if we're going to turn the corner totally.
Well, there's no doubt. And there's no doubt that the Southeast continues to be America's competitive region. And just as we're on the phone here, I was talking to the Lieutenant Governor of Texas Friday at the lunch. And I think this Wednesday, they're going to have the school choice bill on the Texas Senate floor. Of course, already a state without a personal income tax. You've got Sarah Huckabee Sanders and so many other competitors in the region that you're making some great strides in the right direction. But don't for a minute think that the Southeast can to let you just catch up that easily. It's going to be a race to the top, and that's a good thing because competition is good at the end of the day.
But most of these places where we're seeing school choice, is it mostly in the South? Are you making any headway in the Midwest and the East Coast and the West Coast? You're making any headway other than the South?
Yeah, we've seen some really good reforms, in the Southwest as well. We had Arizona ranked number 2 in our report, for instance. We've seen Oklahoma get an A in our report. We've seen Iowa, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio. And then, of course, I mentioned West Virginia that kicked off the movement. So it's been a geographically diverse aspect of what we've seen on school choice. And one in the Northeast that I think is primed, that would be the first in New England, would be New Hampshire under their new governor, Kelly Ayotte, who was just elected this last November. I think there's a real opportunity for them to go universal school choice and really have all 4 regions then represented. So it's a national movement.
Yeah, once you start getting the movement in other places and they take off with it, I don't understand why anybody's fighting this. You're not trying to take nothing away from anyone. You're trying to enhance people to have choice so they can have a better place for their kids to go to school. What the heck's wrong with allowing parents to make good choices for their children? That's what I don't understand. How can anybody be fighting against this?
It's confusing, isn't it? And I think the only people fighting against it are the actual teachers' unions. In fact, even the rank and file teachers in many cases like these reforms. The parents like these reforms because at the end of the day, Moon, if we believe in free markets and competition is good for everybody. And so you have competition. I would make the argument that I think competition is going to end up making the public schools better and more competitive. And that's going to be good for teachers and everybody in the long run. And in so many of these different packages that governors have put together, we've seen teacher pay raises as part of them. So we're making investments in public education at the same time as giving parents the choice. And at the end of the day, they're going to make the right choice for their kids 100% of the time.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, it's always a pleasure. Let's not take too long to get back together, and I appreciate you, brother.
Well, let's do that. Keep up the great work, my friend.